Kenshi is more than just a game. It's a world with a checkered past. It's filled with some of the darkest souls fiction has to offer. It's seen sick, twisted monsters who have committed unspeakable acts against all aspects of life. Not only is Kenshi filled with actual monsters whose evil rivals some of our world's most prolific fictional and historical villains, it makes it so that you can become one without even knowing it. When you finish your time with Kenshi, you will almost certainly feel like you're leaving the world better than you found it, when in reality, you've left it in much worse shape than before. While there are truly diabolical and nefarious characters in Kenshi, these long-necked dorks are worse than any of that, I swear to God. They're out for blood, and if you start getting chased by these bastards, you better start praying to whatever gods you worship. Scratch that, because if there were any gods left in Kenshi, I'm sure these beak things would find where they live, long-neck thwack them into a pile of cherry Kool-Aid powder, then eat it just so they can poop it out into the $800 ancient Chinese embroidered vase that holds your great Gam's ashes. There are literally leviathans that are bigger than buildings in this game, and they don't scare me nearly as much as these wacky inflatable tube-necked idiots. In this video, I'm going to talk about the world of Kenshi and how awesome and amazing it is as a game. I'm going to talk about how your decisions can either save or damn organic life for millennia to come. In order to do this, I'm going to need to cover the basics of the game, because from the get-go, the developers are setting you on a path towards ruin. I'll cover what the player means to the world, what it means to survive, and what life can be like in Kenshi for the average person. Then I'll cover the greater factions of the game, and summarize them in a way you would typically view them if you don't go particularly deep into the lore of the game. Then I will talk about what you need to do to make life on Kenshi flourish, ending with Kenshi's hidden past, and how with the best intentions you have probably damned it to a fate worse than it had when you started there. Make no mistake, setting Kenshi on the right path isn't easy, and in almost all cases would be better if you had died and left no impact on its world. If you are a storied veteran of Kenshi, and you don't care to hear about the strong foundation Kenshi is placed upon, I suggest skipping to Chapter 4 or Chapter 5. Beginning Kenshi is like many other open-world sandbox games. You get a wide variety of sliders to tweak the difficulty exactly how you want it. Once you have the game exactly as you like, you get to pick how you want to start your game off with a series of different backstories. These stories can start you off anywhere, from absolutely destitute to, holy crap, why is this even a starting option? I've literally died immediately when picking this 5 times, why would the devs make this an option? And anywhere in between. Once you have selected the backstory you are most comfortable with, you can edit your character's looks. Your race will be restricted based on what backstory you choose. But here at race selection is where the first breath of life is tempered into Kenshi. Race and gender are integral parts of the Kenshi world. Some races are categorically weaker than others, with the exception of very good boys. And if you're anything besides a male human, then you are starting off at a major disadvantage in certain parts of the world. There are a few major factions, but each one has differing levels of racism and sexism. The robot race being the strongest and most durable, but also being considered a kill-on-sight demon in some parts of the world. There isn't any way to change these belief systems either. The faction who considers women impure lessers will always see them as lessers. The only way to, quote-unquote, change them, or any faction for that matter, is to destroy their faction and replace it with a different power. So make sure you choose your starting characters wisely. While every decision you will make in Kenshi is important, your starting characters don't make much of a difference in the grand scheme of the game, because you can always go around recruiting more and more squad members from each and every race. In this game, each individual character in your squad is truly nothing. The game won't even end when the last character in your party dies. The world just keeps turning until you start again or quit. Speaking of dying, it's one of the easiest tasks to accomplish in Kenshi. Fighting virtually anyone at the beginning of the game will end with you at death's door, and any fair fight between you and another person will likely end up with one or both of you bleeding out on the ground. And finding a fair fight where you can fight one-on-one is nearly impossible, since most NPCs walk around in groups of between 5 and 20 members large. One way to force a fair fight is to recruit more squad mates. This will be difficult because most people in Kenshi don't want anything to do with you and won't even talk to you except to try and extort you or tell you you look like the backside of a bull and then try to turn you into their slave. The vast majority of the ones that will actually join you require money, and it's not easy to make money in Kenshi. They don't ask you for an easy to gain sum either. If you want to survive here, you're going to have to earn it. If you're going to survive more than a couple days, you're going to have to learn how to survive as nothing and quick. Each character in the game has a set of stats for every activity in the game. Stealing, crafting, getting the crap kicked out of you, manual labor, and so on. You'll need to work hard to train those up in order to make any real headway in the world of Kenshi. Except for getting the crap beat out of you. That will happen literally all the time. But before you can start building those stats, you have to figure out how to get the most basic necessities in Kenshi. Food. Food isn't growing all over the place in farmable locations. You can really only get it by buying it from stores, stealing it, or growing it yourself. Each of these methods come with their own risks and tribulations, but make no mistake, you will starve without it, and you are not the only one. Bandits, escaped slaves, outlaws, and just random everyday citizens you see will be suffering from the same ailment, hunger. The safest way to get food is to pay for it, but that's only if you have the money, because getting money isn't necessarily safe. Kenshi doesn't hold your hand while playing. The tutorial is basically just an explanation of the base UI. If you want to make money, you're going to have to figure out how you can by yourself, and what you can do to get your hands on it. Then you need to work for it however you've decided to. Being a slave is actually one of the best shots at survival. You don't have to worry about food because your masters will feed you. It's honestly not a bad life as long as you don't care about pesky things like freedom. In the first couple of days of the game, there really are only a couple of ways to make enough money to survive. You can gather materials like ore and sell it, or you can pull a group of bandits to the local guards so that the guards will slaughter the bandits instead of the bandits knocking you out to see if you have any food on you. Then, once they're dead, you can pick their corpses clean of every item they have and sell the supplies. Maybe that'll teach you guys to be bandits and hungry. Once you've earned the right to survive a single day in Kenshi, you need to start earning enough for every day after that. The game gives you nothing for free. If you become a slave to feed yourself, you'll likely want to escape eventually. So even that is really just postponing the start of the game a little. If you gather materials, you'll need to keep doing it, otherwise the money will run out, and with it, the food. If you're scavenging off corpses, you'll have to keep doing it, resolving yourself to never look back on the thousands of men and women you led to their death, just so you could rob them of their possessions and sell it, instead of just mining ore. You'll want to do this until you find a better way to make money, or until you make enough money to hire another member to help you increase production, or the bandits catch you and kill you before you can reach the guards. Once you have time to think, but not about all the souls of the damned that you led to the slaughter, and every minute of your time isn't spent towards feeding your squad, it's time to start living. There is no storyline in Kenshi, no quest markers, and no journal to keep track of what you need to do. There is just a world that doesn't care whether or not you are in it, and if it wants anything from you, it's that you leave. You may have caught on, but life in Kenshi really starts to diverge once you've survived a few days. You can become a drug trader, sell prisoners into slavery, trade in finished goods, become bounty hunters, archaeologists. Your imagination is the limit here. While there is no quest-based storyline in Kenshi, it as a world has a storied past. Skeletons are highly advanced artificial life, but the technology to create them has been lost for millennia. In fact, you get a sense that a lot has been lost to the passage of time. The state of the world is much sorrier than it once was. Landmarks are actually gigantic man-made pieces of millennia-old technology, research books filled with highly advanced forms of agriculture and weaponry that you can't find anywhere in the world, stories of godlike beings battling for the life of the planet. Stories that feel more like distorted history than mythological text. Whispers of ancient places where no one has ever come back from. There is a whole fantastical history to be discovered out there, piece by piece. But putting those pieces together is just as hard as finding them. You'll need to get much stronger if you want to get to the bottom of the darkest secrets your world has spent thousands of years making sure are hidden. Instead of leveling with experience and thereby leveling your stats, the stats you have in this game level with action. If you want to become a better fighter, you have to fight. If you want to become a better miner, you need to mine. Kenshi's systems are fair. If you get beaten down, your defense gets stronger. If you run from a group of cannibals, your athleticism goes up. If you create goods to sell, your skills at crafting improve. There is never anything you're doing in Kenshi that isn't rewarding you in some way. Even if you're caught by a group of skin bandits and they remove every one of your character's limbs, you can replace them with better, more powerful robotic limbs, and your defense will go up more than it's ever gone up before because of this experience. The worst thing a character can do is die, but even then, as long as they weren't the last person in your squad, the work they did leaves the rest of your squad stronger than if they hadn't been there. A quote from Helen Keller is as follows: "Although the world is filled with suffering, it is full also of the overcoming of it." Life in Kenshi is suffering, but every time you overcome it, you come out more powerful. I always believe that because death is such a real concern in Kenshi, you can move forward with purpose to always improve yourself and those who choose to follow you. Before you can understand the world of Kenshi and the secrets surrounding it, I need to cover the different powers that exist currently in the world. There are several major and minor factions in Kenshi. These factions come in and out of power because of the world-state mechanic. This is one of the systems that really adds to the immersion of the game. A single city can be held by 8 or 9 different factions depending on what leaders are alive or dead and when they died. Each and every city has different world states, and that ability for the places you visit to react to who you've killed or who you have captured enhances the feeling that that world is actually alive. I'm not going to cover the intricacies of the world state functionality in depth in this video, but how robust this mechanic is what makes this game a standard in the sandbox and open world genres. This functionality is a huge part of why I said you can become a huge monster at the beginning of this video. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I talk about that, I'm going to need to cover the names of the nations, their leaders, and the core political beliefs and political relations among the other factions. The first faction I want to cover are the Tech Hunters. No matter what your backstory is, this is most likely one of the first factions you're going to come in contact with. This faction's primary goal is to discover ancient technology from the past, and they do this by wandering from city to city, checking shops for any new tech discoveries they might have gotten recently. They fund this by acting as one of the main mercenary guilds in the game. They don't have a centralized nation, but they own almost all of the outposts in the land. Cities they do own are some of the more technologically advanced ones, but unfortunately in this game that's not saying that much. They also have the only intact library in the world, housing copies of every written lore piece and blueprint in the game. They consist of every race and have no enemies to speak of. They maintain this standing by writing guides on how to best survive the harsher environments and not anger any of the other factions in the game. They also house and supply another faction which is considered to be one of the smallest factions in the game, the Mechanics. The Mechanics are most concerned with researching the ancient technology the Tech Hunters recover and discovering the history of Kenshi. There are 2 great civilizations that have existed over the years, once 1,000 years ago called the Second Empire, and one several thousand years ago called the First Empire. They research these ancient civilizations and their technology and the secrets of both of their downfalls. referenced as the two great calamities. Another faction, the Hive, lives up to its name. There are few hive minds that all work towards a specific goal. There are 3 main hives in the game, and they all have a different yet simple goal. One is to make money, one is to kill anyone who threatens their queen, and one is to eat people. That last group also kills people, but that's not the goal. Their lives are spent just trying as hard as they can to fulfill these goals. The only race this group is made up of are hivers. Their bases are spread out on the map, and have a huge number of hivers in each one of them. If you attack a hive, you'll be swarmed with hundreds of hivers all at once. While hivers excel in quantity, they lack limb quality. This makes attacking a hive popping a party popper, but instead of nice colored confetti flying everywhere, you'll have hiver arms and legs flopping violently in every direction. Have I mentioned the ragdoll physics in this game can be a little, silly? The Shek Kingdom is filled with Shek. They are a warrior-based civilization who believes death in battle is the ultimate honor. The elderly even go as far as challenging an ancient evil called the Bugmaster. They travel to his lair in order to finally die in combat before they succumb to old age or sickness. When the game starts, they're coming up of the tail end of a lost war with the Holy Nation. They don't like other races very much and view them as inferior, weak, soft, fleshy nobodies, calling humans flatskins whenever they meet them. All this nation wants is the glory from battle. This leads them to be filled with strong warriors, but makes them even less technologically advanced than the nation that bans technology under pain of death. Their leader is their most powerful warrior, titled the Stone Golem. She is directly protected by the 5 Invincibles, who are meant to be the next 5 most powerful warriors, and then the 100 Guardians. These positions are held by power and can be challenged by others. Losing to someone means you lose your spot. Their power structure is based on battle power alone. Their deity-like figure is a warrior of old that died fighting and killing hundreds of enemies all at once. The Holy Nation I just mentioned is another large faction. This is made up of humans, and they hold a very archaic religious belief. Women are impure seductresses who are lesser than men and whose bodies only serve as temptation of darkness and seduction. All races like Shek and Hivers are inherently evil, as according to their religious manuscripts they were originally human and their greed and negative emotions morphed them into the beasts they are today. They view technology as the work of the devil and will kill anyone who is seen holding it. Skeletons are despised as literal demons and the agents of the devil. They are to be killed on sight. The devil in their religion is a woman named Narco. Their god is a man named Akron, and their religious texts state that Narco, armed with her technology and her demons, are the cause of the first great calamity that put Kenshi initially into the desolate state it is today, and Akron stopped her. Their day-to-day life is spent participating in their religion, with the structure of their government being similar to the ancient Egypt's. Holy men are given the most power, and the main leader being the reincarnation of the closest living thing to a god after Akron, the founder of their nation, the Holy Lord Phoenix. However, this is the only born position in this faction. The next 2 most powerful individuals are the High Inquisitors. Through political means and battle exploits, they have earned their positions in the government and control large regions of their faction. Everyone in the Holy Nation reports to one of these 3 men either directly or indirectly. In terms of a centralized government, they are probably the 2nd biggest faction in the game and have the largest quantity of farms and supply a majority of the world's food supply. The Flotsam Ninjas are a faction that is revolutionary in nature to the Holy Nation. It's filled with, as they say, the fathers and brothers who couldn't stand seeing half of their population be treated like trash, and women who couldn't stand by as they were ridiculed for something they had never done. It is understood that they still actively worship the religion of the Holy Nation, but believe the treatment of women has gone too far since the current Holy Lord Phoenix has come to power. They still fear skeletons as demons and other races as disfigured humans, but aren't as equipped as the Holy Nation to make enemies, so they begrudgingly tolerate their presence. Most of their bases are hidden north of the Holy Nation, and they are led by the founder of the faction, Maul. There are Swampers, who are basically a cabal of gangs who operate in a place no nation would want to. They supply the world's narcotics and don't offer much besides being the most wretched hive of scum and villainy. You best be cautious. Their leader is the leader of the largest gang and is the most cunning and violent of their entire group. Their territory is one of the biggest nuisances to traverse. It's filled with water, the village of Hidden in the Mist, and blood spiders. And you will absolutely loathe blood spiders. The Skeletons are a somewhat recluse faction in the middle of the continent. They live in a terrain that is incredibly difficult to get to if you are not a skeleton. They don't have food anywhere in their city because no organic life lives there, or visits. They aren't hostile to organic life, the environment they live can be though. This is the most technologically advanced faction in the world. They make all of the weapons they carry on them, and are the strongest weapons that are still forged in this day and age. You can get robotic limbs here that have major bonuses to your stats if you ever lose a limb. They also have a stockpile of the strongest weapons anywhere. They're held in a junk house, and the vendor who sells them calls his wares a pile of junk. Skeletons live forever, so they have to reset their memory when they've been alive too long. And you get a sense that a lot of skeletons have just given up living and are going to spend the rest of their days here, away from any other life. They don't have any leader to speak of. One of the more liked factions in the game is the Anti-Slavers, and they are one of the smaller, if not the smallest faction in the game, tied with only the mechanics. They are led by one of the strongest individuals in the game, Tin Fist. He has one of the strongest weapons in the game, his Fists of Justice! He is a fun character to be around, if you couldn't guess from his Fists of Justice, and he is probably tied with the hardest single mob to kill in the entire game. He is a hero from ages past and the leader of a noble cause. The whole purpose of the Anti-Slavers, if you haven't guessed, is to make ice cream in the desert. Wait, no, that's someone else. Free the slaves of Kenshi. They try to topple certain factions due to their mass slave population, but destroying those factions is a means to an end, not the primary purpose of the faction. The last faction I'm going to talk about is actually a conglomerate of a few factions. The United Cities, the Empire Peasants, the Traders Guild, and the Slave Traders. They all sort of work together to be one whole, more or less. The Empire Peasants are a majority of the citizens of the entire conglomerate. They live in the cities owned by the Traders Guild and the United Cities as civilians. The Slave Traders are similar to the United Cities, but the power structure is a bit different. The Slave Trader cities are run by individual nobles and trade in slaves, where each noble operates relatively independent of the group and focuses on their own city. The United Cities have the same power structure with nobles, but they report to one specific noble, the Emperor Tengu. The nobles are literally all just adult children. They are fat, whiny, despicable creatures who care nothing for the life around them. They have no goals except to indulge in every pleasure imaginable. If you ever raid their houses, you'll find drugs, art, sex paraphernalia, and everything in between. They are all kept in power by the samurai who report to them. These are the warriors of the conglomerate. They serve each noble until death. The Traders Guild isn't run by nobles, it's run by merchants. They do mercantile work in most cities, having between one and many stores in every city across all the factions. This conglomerate is a massive slave faction of the game. The Holy Nation has slaves, but they are more religious prisoners than forced manual labor. While not a huge difference, this set of factions will capture poor people off the streets because being poor is a crime and then turn them into slaves for life. The slaves are used for a variety of manual labor tasks, such as mining stone and ore to be sold to the rest of the world. This is not all of the factions, but these are the ones that are going to be most focused on if you can make it to the late game. I want to give a special shout out to the Crab Nation. While they don't fit into the main premise of repeating the mistakes of the past, if you go to war with them, you're an asshole. Honestly, you deserve whatever beak thing hell you end up in. By the end of your playthrough, you will be able to choose what nations, if any, are still in power. And if you destroy the Crab Nation, I swear to God, I'm going to find you. I just gave you a relatively in-depth breakdown of each faction, and the only way to learn more than what I've given you is to spend a great deal of time figuring out what secrets each faction holds, and studying the state and ramifications of a single faction coming to power or losing power on the global scale. In order to do this, you must read a lot about the history of Kenshi through the broken bits of written and environmental clues, trigger hidden dialogue, and you'll need to find as well as study the remnants of an ancient hidden faction, so most likely the vast majority of players will only know what I've mentioned up to this point in this video, and likely even less than that. I'm going to start talking about hidden truths now. I didn't leave anything out of my descriptions in the previous section, and what I left out isn't meant to be used as now some kind of gotcha. I really believe that doing what feels right only further puts the world in misery and technological decline. And I want to show that by talking about what the future may hold based on who's in power. I talked about how multiple cities have multiple world states, and destroying a city's leader can lead to another faction taking over the city as their own. This can lead the city to have ruined buildings and NPCs who live there changing from one faction to another. You will likely choose a side and then wipe out the leaders of the factions you don't like. The current state of Kenshi is desolation. So much technology is lost, and the most advanced ideas all come from scavenging ancient ruins of past civilizations. I mentioned very briefly before there were two great civilizations. One was named the First Empire, and the second was named the Second Empire. Go figure. The technologies of the Second Empire, which existed about 1,000 years prior to the start of the game, were far inferior to the First, which was several thousands of years before the start of the game. The current technology isn't anywhere near even the Second Empire's level of tech. Most of the population of Kenshi is starving, wandering around with no place to call home. There are virtually no well-fed individuals in Kenshi besides the nobles and leaders of factions. These are the only kind of people that will have any kind of excess. Fighting over what few resources are left is extremely common. Not only that, but the wilderness of Kenshi is brutal. Spiders, leviathans, deadly terrain, and beak things. Living anywhere in Kenshi is difficult. Living for an extended period of time somewhere in Kenshi is nearly impossible. Food and shelter are really the only two things people can worry about. The only entertainment you'll find anywhere in Kenshi is booze and drugs, and I think that's intentional. There's no time to make music, there's no time to enjoy music, there's no time for games. You either survive in Kenshi or you don't, simple as that. In order to facilitate infinite growth, you need infinite resources, and with a world with as scarce of resources as Kenshi, we are constantly in a decline. So an excess of food and shelter is needed to obtain free time, allowing people to reclaim hobbies and activities for fun instead of survival. I want to talk about this baseline because what I'm going to say first will be the most controversial topic in this video. The Holy Nation needs to be left standing and the Shek Kingdom must be destroyed. I'm not saying this to be controversial. The Holy Nation is the oldest civilization in the game. The Holy Lord Phoenix is the 62nd of his name. When a Phoenix dies, the very next human male born in the Holy Nation is crowned as the Phoenix Resurrected. The Kenshi Wiki puts the creation of the Holy Nation sometime before the Second Empire and after the First, likely closer to the Second. But I think that's incorrect. I believe the Holy Nation was founded at the First Empire's demise. I base this on the passing of one Phoenix to another and their lore about Akron and Narco. If I base this solely on the passing of the Phoenix, if they were established exactly at the fall of the Second Empire 1,000 years ago, that puts the average age of a Phoenix when they die at 16. Every 100 or so years you add doesn't add much to the average age. The 62nd Phoenix is likely between 50 and 80 years old based on looks alone. If you were to guess that each Phoenix lived an average of 50 years, taking into account a few premature deaths balanced out with probably having a much longer lifespan than a regular person in Kenshi due to at the beginning there being better health science, and him being at the highest position of a nation the entire reign, giving him access to the best his nation's medicine has to offer. That would put the inception of the Holy Nation over 3,000 years ago, right around the time the First Empire was likely collapsing. That, coupled with the fight of Narco and her demons against Akron being very similar to the events that likely transpired during the fall of the First Empire, meaning that the first Phoenix might have seen what happened during the first collapse. That this nation alone is the only one that stood is a testament to a point I'd like to make later in this video. One of the reasons for this is their aversion to technology, specifically skeletons. Technology has been a part of both empires' fall, and I will talk about skeletons in depth later. They also have something to hold on to through all the tragedies, and that's faith. The hope that there's something better after death. Faith can be a strong motivator for people in hopeless situations. It can be a good way for a human mind to cope in an impossible-to-face situation. This is the only nation with any kind of religious beliefs, and I don't think it's a coincidence that they are the only ones to have survived, and they've survived for 3,000 plus years. So if you wiped out their leaders, it would likely lead to the Holy Nation in ruin. Even though the title of Phoenix would pass on, while the current Holy Phoenix has been indoctrinated since he was a child, his two High Inquisitors are revered as devout and intelligent leaders. They are true believers who can make sure the next Holy Lord Phoenix returns to be a more reasonable leader. I want to point out that the inception of the Flotsam Ninjas is relatively new, and most likely the reason for this is the newest Phoenix is the most brutal of all Phoenixes in history. Most Holy Phoenixes, while still the head of a strict and bigoted code, were not nearly as hostile as the current Lord Phoenix. The current Holy Lord Phoenix is also the one that caused the United Cities to be at war with the Holy Nation, having relatively peaceful interactions in the past. Only when abducted by a high priest after birth did Phoenix become as harsh and hate-filled as the one we have now. There are a couple of reasons it's important that the Phoenix survive, even though a new Phoenix will be named after his death. The first is that if you violently murder the Phoenix, the Flotsam Ninjas will take over his base. Likely one of the first things the High Inquisitors will do is find the next Phoenix, and their first order of business will be to take back his throne. This will lead them to kill the Flotsam Ninjas in war. The only way to avoid this is if you kill the Inquisitors, and if you do that, this leads to the fall of the Holy Nation, like I said, which I will explain in a minute why we need to avoid this. I believe the Holy Nation can keep surviving as long as the High Inquisitors are alive, but the only way the Flotsam Ninjas can survive is either if the Holy Phoenix is alive with them, or if the Holy Phoenix and both Inquisitors are dead. And I would like to avoid the Flotsam Ninjas having to die. So I've talked about the Holy Nation surviving for 3,000 years, but not why they need to keep surviving for the good of Kenshi's future. The reason for this is because of what I said about advancing civilization. The Holy Nation is the lead provider of Kenshi's food supply. They have farms all over their territory, and if you want to progress organic life, you can't significantly hinder the land's food supply. We're already in a decline, like I said. If you kill all three leaders of the Holy Nation, this will disrupt the land's long-term food supply, which at best may cause severe famine for the next couple decades, and at worst permanently cripple the sustainable population of Kenshi, leading to more war and more damaged food supplies. So why does the Shek Kingdom need to perish if the Holy Nation gets a pass? It's not because I don't love me some thick muscle mommy squeezing my head between her thighs like a watermelon. It's because thick muscle mommy will actually squeeze my head in her thighs like a watermelon, thereby killing me. The Shek want war. They crave death in battle. Outside of the base of the most dangerous men in Kenshi, there is an inn. And if they've reached an old age, they'll head to this inn so that they can die in battle. They crave honor. Even if they were to kill the entire Holy Nation, they would thirst for more battle soon enough. If they wiped out the entire nation of Kenshi, that wouldn't mean they were done. They'd just thirst for more war with each other. I'm not saying that I hate the Shek Kingdom, I'm just trying to reach the ideal of abundant food and abundant shelter. And the Shek contributes to neither. While they are the largest producer of meat, it's not because they have farms to grow animals, it's just because they kill the most animals in their mountains. They are self-destructive, and if you don't do something about them, they would go to war with other factions to gain honor in killing or to gain honor in dying themselves. I'm not saying they can't change, but for the immediate purposes of advancing the living standard of life in Kenshi, having a nation that thirsts for war is dangerous, so I say we just give them the death in battle that they crave. I said before, I really don't think you need to kill the Flotsam Ninjas. They want the Phoenix dead, but they are also believers in Akron's religion. So if they can convince a coup to take place, or get some laws to be relaxed, I think that would be a better future for the Holy Nation. You might argue that killing the Phoenix and letting the Flotsam Ninjas there is the better decision, instead of having him continue his reign of terror, and you might be right. I don't know categorically which choice is better, but I'd worry that the Flotsam Ninjas would be wiped out by the two High Inquisitors, and that's why I don't think that's the right choice. So, we now have the Holy Nation, and once the current Phoenix passes, we'll be friendly to their neighbors to the east as our dominant power to the west. Now that they're unhindered by the war with the Shek, this will give them the ability to focus on increasing farm production, thereby increasing food for the entire realm. We've checked one of our two boxes. Hell yeah. Now, I can go full edgelord and explain why slavery is actually good and we can't kill the slave masters, right? Wrong. We get to kill a ton of those bitches. Just not all, unfortunately. Before going into who lives and who dies, I want to talk about the two initial checkboxes of food and shelter. I need to point out another important aspect of advancing life, and that's technology. I didn't talk about this before talking about the Holy Nation because they despise any kind of technological advancements. And while it's helped keep them alive, I want to talk about it now because it's an important aspect of who lives and dies in the United Cities. There's a city named Kat-Un, and in this city they create the most advanced weaponry organic life is capable of creating at this point in time, and they can only make it in this city. If you were to break the weapon quality into tiers, 1 being the highest, then the quality that Kat-Un can make would be tier 4. That's how far life has fallen in the world. I also said that Skeleton City can create the most advanced weaponry in the world. Their quality is only of tier 3. There is only one city in the entire world where organic life can make up to quality of tier 4 weapons. Now there is a counterpoint to this that you can make. If you fully research all lost technology in the world, and you have a weaponsmith with a high enough skill level, you can make tier 2 weapons. But when deciding what's best for the world, I try to think outside of how my squad specifically can directly affect the world. Just to give you a little reference to how messed up the technology is, it's like the tier maker Twitter retweeted a tier list where Burger King was listed as a C tier fast food restaurant. And then they celebrated acting like they were God's gift to fast food. C tier isn't that high on the list, but when everyone else is D tier or lower, you feel like you've really accomplished something. So I want to go into this understanding why just wiping out every city will not necessarily lead to a good result for everyone in Kenshi. And the fact that your squad can make tier 2 weapons is irrelevant, and I'll touch on that later. So I want to add a third checklist to that box, and that is to further the advancement of organic technology as much as we can. And at the very least, we do not set organic advancement back at all. So now with our third goal in mind, let's set off to kill some slave masters. There are a lot of slave masters in the world of Kenshi, and I'm not going to go over each and every one of them that needs to die, but I'll explain some rules we can follow when we're going about killing them. First off, we need to kill Emperor Baby Tengu. He's a man-child who is a little more than a fat adult baby, going as far as telling his guards to catch him a leviathan because he wants one. The guards laugh at this and shrug it off as a joke, but this is the kind of people most nobles are. They are fat, useless Slavs, not unlike me. Killing them usually means the Empire peasants take over the city, leaving the city in a world state of prosperity once enough of the nobles are dead. However, the nobles do still run the United Cities, and there are cities that would be worse off if they were dead like Kat-Un. Kat-Un would just immediately get taken over by monsters and become uninhabitable by any sentient organic life. To me, this is the first piece of evidence that I have that what I'm talking about is actually the developer's intentions. That you need to sacrifice your purely good moral choices for the overall good of everyone in the world. This is one thing I want to avoid. If killing a noble only leaves a city in ruin, making it unable to add to the world's total prosperity, we leave that noble alive. Except for the slave markets, murder those pieces of shit. As a side note, in my own head, I think capturing the nobles is a much better punishment than killing them. You can starve them, torture them, rip their limbs off, any number of fun things. If you're into game mechanics, this is also a good way to raise your rep up. You can heal them in front of each other, and this will improve your relations for those factions. And you get to torture them some more and do it again. Torture, do it again, torture, do it again. It's a good time. You should try it. If you keep following this rule, you'll avoid the outcome I'm about to talk about. But another reason you can't kill every slave master is because of our initial 2 checkboxes. I said earlier that this conglomerate of factions is the lead producer of building materials, and we need an excess of shelter if we're going to allow unlimited growth. Any stone farms you kill the noble of will immediately become ruins, and then, just like with the Holy Nation, you've stunted shelter production, at best for a few decades, at worst, forever. I believe the head of the Traders Guild also needs to be sacked. While they are smart merchants, their leader holds back the world state of a lot of towns. If you don't kill or capture him, a lot of the towns won't reach their prosperous state. So now we've killed a lot of strategic leaders of the United Cities. This is easier to talk about than the Holy Nation because I wasn't actually defending some shitheads' right to live, just the very small few that life on Kenshi would actually be worse off without. With this, we're actually done killing any organic life on Kenshi. We've established a good food supply, and now we have freed a lot of slaves, as well as made sure that shelter would be abundant in the future. I didn't touch on the swamplands because I didn't think there was any reason to. The world isn't any better or worse with or without them. You could argue that hashish is bad for the world. You could also argue that hashish is good for the world. But that's a matter of personal interpretation. So, we've got good tech coming from the tech hunters, we have a good food supply from the Holy Nation, and we have a good supply of shelter materials coming from the United Cities. Overall, we're set for a resurgence in organic life, right? Of course we are. That's not a trick question. I wonder why any of the empires ever fell in the first place. Well, whatever caused the first and second great calamity, that's all in the past now, right? Right? Why isn't the overview starting? Up until this point, I've been doing playful speculation and crafting a fun little theory on the best way to ensure organic life thrives in Kenshi, but I haven't really dived deep into the hidden past of the game. I'm going to do that now. If you like world building and discovering hidden mysteries, please skip to the overview, because while what I was saying before was fun speculation, I am going to tell you hard facts about Kenshi's first two calamities, so I'll give you a second to skip. Alright, I've avoided it up till now, but what caused the first and second calamity is still in the world. Based on lore books and environmental cues, the organic life that was alive during the first calamity was a very war-bent society. They were nearly wiped out by synthetic life during that time. The organic life that didn't die went on to be the ancestors of all organic life in Kenshi today. The synthetic life that wiped out organic life, however, are the skeletons that are walking around to this day. This isn't a joke. This isn't speculation. The skeletons you recruit, talk to, and fight are the same skeletons that wiped out organic life on two separate occasions. And I don't mean their ancestors, I mean them specifically. There is talk about how they wipe their memories every now and again to get over mental trauma, but that itself seems to be a lie told by skeletons to organic life to make sure they never learn the truth. I mentioned the mechanics faction earlier in the video. Their second in command is a skeleton who, when talked to by an organic life form, will talk about all of their theories about what happened in the past, and talking about how frustrating it is to be a historian whose memory has been wiped. If you then talk to him with a skeleton, he'll say not to waste his time with this ruse, and that the skeleton you're talking to shouldn't worry about what he's going to say, because he'll make sure the organics never find out about what happened in the past. I mean, this is pretty damning evidence. This is a skeleton who says his memory has been wiped, and he's frustrated about it, but it's clearly not true. And he believes that the skeleton that is talking to him, the one you're playing, the one you recruited, is in on this notion. This is also replicated with a quirky and funny junk salesman in the skeleton's base, where instead of quirky and funny, he's actually just about to spill secrets to an organic life form and catches himself before he does. When you talk to him with a skeleton, he will talk about things like the Chaos Age, which is dated to be right after the fall of the First Empire. You could say that these skeletons could be different, but when the first calamity happened, new synthetic life was impossible to create. So every skeleton walking around now has been walking the earth since the First Empire thousands of years ago. I mentioned before when I was wrapping up the faction section that there is a secret hidden faction. The hidden faction is the skeleton remnants of the Second Empire. If you go to the Ashlands, which you've been told to avoid the entire game, you will fight a lot of powerful skeletons, all labeled as the faction of the Second Empire. Each one of the leaders of these skeletons have a tragic tale behind them. If you kill or knock them out, you can view their CPUs, and they all have sad stories attached to them, like not being able to feed their organic subjects during a time of famine and them all dying, child prisoners getting slaughtered, and a progressively dictatorial rule by their leader of the Second Empire, Cat Lon. Cat Lon's CPU said how he felt guilty for the fate that his kind had condemned organic life to, and how it's so long ago that no organic life can even remember what happened. This is the second piece of evidence for me that skeletons really did cause the first calamity. Here, during this trek through the Ashlands, we come to understand that the second calamity was the rise and fall of the tyrannical dictatorship ruled over by Cat Lon. This happened during assumingly the 42nd Lord Holy Phoenix's rule. And Cat Lon feeling guilty about what the skeletons did in the past lines up with the founding of the doctrine about skeletons being demons who try to wipe out humanity under Narco's command. With a couple thousand years separating Cat Lon's rise to power and the original calamity, I would expect little to nothing about the first calamity to be remembered by any organic life, unless it was preserved as religious doctrine. Even today, it takes until about the end of the game for the secrets of the second calamity to be known, because barely anything is known about it, and it was only 1,000 years ago. Now, at the very least, we have definitive evidence that Cat Lon was the ruler of the Second Empire, and he is the cause of the second calamity. And while not having 100% proof, we have strong world evidence that skeletons were the cause of the first calamity. So in short, we can't reach that third checkbox without wiping out several skeletons. Otherwise, any attempts to advance life will be abruptly ended by skeletons making a third calamity. This is where I start to falter in my adamant resolve, though. While I think some skeletons need to perish, and for good reason, I can't condone wiping out all skeletons. We need to be better than them. We can't just wipe them out because they are dangerous to us, because that's exactly what happened to our ancestors. And just like the United Cities, we need to wipe out key players or else they will just hinder us even more. The first and most important target is the second in command of the mechanics. He is actively sabotaging the research needed to advance organic technology. As long as his gears are turning, our overall technology cannot progress, and the truth of the past will never be known. The second and the most obvious target is the Second Empire itself. Cat Lon and the remnants of his empire are a danger to organic life. If we don't kill them, they could wipe out future generations like it's nothing. After this, there are a few targets we could fight. Maybe the Armor King. I don't know enough about his lore to know if he's a threat. The two junk shop owners are sitting on the most dangerous cache of weapons in the world. They might be dangerous if left alive, but I don't know for sure, because skeletons in the center of Kenshi have chosen a life of recluse. I want to believe they're doing it because they've turned over a new leaf. The final, and honestly the most heartbreaking kill on the hit list to save the world of Kenshi is Tin Fist. Tin Fist is a lovable character, and he fights for a very good cause, and is honestly a tragic hero. He and Cat Lon founded the Second Empire, when it was supposed to be a utopia. When the utopia started turning into a hellscape, he devoted his life to freeing the humans and organics trapped in chains. I assume at first he freed humans that the Second Empire had imprisoned, but when they were all freed and the United Cities started holding slaves, he refocused his attention there. But that's not the reason we have to kill Tin Fist. Before I tell you why Tin Fist has to die, I need to come clean as to why we've done everything we've done until now. Because you know all you need to know to understand it, and thereby I believe you can understand the developer's intentions with this game. Cat Lon was a hero of his time. He felt immense guilt for what his kind had done to organic life, and set out to build a second empire to help humans come back to power like they had been in before. So he took out some of the most dastardly characters of his time with his best friend Tin Fist, and they eventually formed the Second Empire. They knew all of the technology lost in the ages, they had a memory of life back in the First Empire, they remembered the corrupt leaders and all the mistakes of the First Empire. And this time it would be different. No war, no hunger, no poverty, just utopia. The same thing most people who play Kenshi will strive to bring. Freeing all the slaves, wiping out the religious sect, doing what they believe is right. The thing is, organic life isn't synthetic life. It didn't go perfectly the way Cat Lon had planned it, and it won't go perfectly how you planned it either. At the start, maybe it was drugs, maybe it was theft, maybe it was murder. I can't say what happened, but things didn't turn out the way Cat Lon had intended. Every action the organics would make that he thought was evil, he would punish all of humanity for. If someone stole money, he'd make it harder for anyone to steal. If someone murdered, he'd make it harder for them to murder. It doesn't sound like a problem, but he kept placing restrictions on humanity's freedom. Remember how I said at the beginning, if you were a slave, you'd probably eventually fight for freedom? This is what happened with organic life. Stricter curfews, less freedom with every action he took to protect them. When humans revolted against these restrictions, he'd place more. The more he tried to control them, the more they would fight. And he just couldn't understand it. Why wouldn't they let him just make their life perfect? He decided it was because they were just evil. The skeletons weren't wrong in trying to wipe out organic life. So he would finish this job. The problem with this is that Tin Fist and all of his followers saw the madness creeping into Catlon's mind. And now he was seeing this revolt from the humans and his fellow skeletons. Tin Fist was probably still by Catlon's side when he reprogrammed his first skeleton to be his thrall. Maybe even after the second. Those skeletons that were being reprogrammed to follow Catlon's will might have truly deserved it. But after a while, Tin Fist must have been scared that he might be next. And who knows, he might not have made it out in time. Tin Fist is off at times. His monologues about his fists of justice are cute, but kind of off. He probably got away before he was fully enthralled, like Agnew was, another parallel in the story. And that caused him to release droves of organic life. I think this betrayal is what caused Catlon to thrall all of his subjects in order to maintain complete control. This is what I believe to be Catlon and Tin Fist's story. They were great heroes and even greater villains. I believe it's meant to show you what will happen if you try to rule with an iron fist. Wiping out people because you don't like what they're doing instead of because they are a danger to all life on the planet isn't a good idea. It's the exact thing that caused Catlon to trigger the second calamity. And this is exactly how you are going to be added to a list of one of the worst villains of the world if you just blindly follow a moral compass. I mentioned ignoring the technology you've researched. Even though using it would greatly advance the world's technology, I don't think they would cope fast enough with it like Catlon. It just puts you on track to be the Catlon of the Third Empire. Instead of fostering a natural growth among the remnants of organic life, you're just setting up the Third Empire to end in the Third Calamity. In the end, this is why Tin Fist needs to die. Not because he's evil, in fact he's far from it. His goal of freeing all slaves is an extremely noble and commendable one. He needs to die because it's an unbreaking goal of his. In order to free those slaves, he will stop at nothing to kill the nobles. Just like Catlon stopped at nothing to make humans turn away from evil. He will likely kill the Holy Lord Phoenix, the Catun nobles, the Stone Mine nobles if you don't stop him. Like I said before, this cannot happen because if it does, then we lose our means of food and shelter production and some key organic technology. And would it even end there? Would Tin Fist be sated with the death of those people, or what would he try and kill next? We don't know. In order to protect organic life going forward, you have to cut out the weeds holding it back. And while Tin Fist looks like a beautiful dandelion in a desert, he is still a weed that needs to be taken out. I hope you like my breakdown of the lore, politics, and scenes of Kenshi. I think deep hidden lore like this, and choices that turn characters into villains without them even knowing it of their own volition, are just super powerful. These aspects make Kenshi feel truly alive. It's that parallel between some of the key bad guys and you as the player that drives home how good this game ends up being. The icing of this cake is that in order to set this world up to thrive in the best way possible, you have to make decisions that won't sit right with you. Cementing the true concepts of the game and pushing this game into the realm of a true masterpiece in my eyes. There are no heroes, no perfect endings, no perfect people. Just broken people in a broken world. And if you try to deny that, you'll end up committing atrocities willingly. I didn't cover all my theories of knowledge in the game, like the Shek, cannibals, and hivers all being science projects of the Second Empire, and I didn't cover the nature of the technology from the First Empire. They had a lot of really cool toys like gigantic skeletons, huge battleships, flying lasers, and moon bases. I'm finishing up my second video and it's actually been a lot of fun. I know my theories seem outlandish to some, but I don't mind that. I truly believe I'm right about this stuff, so any information disproving or proving these theories, I'd love to see them in the comments down below. Video games are art, and art has a ton of different interpretations. That's what makes it so beautiful. I can't believe I got to the end of this without having an entire 20-minute section devoted to Beep. I assume every dislike of this video will be someone taking a knee for Beep, and I understand. Anyway, Thank you for making it all the way to the end. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment about what you think. I'd really, really love that. Thank you. Bye.